Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Grand Prixquel Podcast, where we discuss all things feeder series. On today's episode, we're going to be doing a recap of the F2 and F3 weekend at Spa, as well as the FREC weekend at Paul Ricard and British F4 at Zandvoort last week. Your hosts today are myself, Evan, Alex, and Nova.
So we get right into F2 because I think quite a lot happened there. I mean, for quali, the pole may seem like the usual thing. Like as we said, we're in Spa, and Kamara put it on pole again. But I feel like the rest of the top 10 have a few surprises there with Interpuvasak on P2, Bennett on P5, I think it was. Oh, wait,
That's P5, yeah.
and Mini having real struggles and being quite far away from the point positions.
Improve attack up that high P2 is, again, reaffirming my idea that ART is just getting paid a bunch of money, and that's how they're getting up there, because the if you told me, like, 3 years ago that Improve attack would be what, well, 2 years ago, actually, it doesn't really matter how long ago, the Improve attack would be P2 in a quality session, or the ART, actually, in general, was that up that high, I'd be like, "Absolutely, there's no way."
I was like, ART is such a weird team because on some tracks they're just like completely ass, but especially in F3 this year, they've been actually pretty solid. And it's such a weird combination because sometimes they can do it, sometimes they're just in the back. It's F2, I'm not surprised about anything, but it's weird.
Also, Double Dam's appearance in the top 10, which I think they're actually getting a little bit better somehow. It's very weird. Again, if you told me like 2 years ago that Dam was doing that good, I'd not believe you. But they're improving a little bit. So
Also, like sometimes they're pretty solid. Like, didn't they plays with Jack Crawford pretty high last year? But then again, what do they actually do? Like, they don't do a lot of series. I think it's really only F2 and F3, and so it's kind of weird. But we can go for the sprint because it was, in my opinion, really typical F2 thing. With on the formation lap, Beganovic kind of like halfway overtaking. I think it was Montoya, and no, it was not Montoya, but it was because Montoya slowed down very, very heavily, and Horn almost stopped, and suddenly Beganovic was in P3. Okay, all right, like he did not have a lot of good luck, I feel like, this weekend.
I think Dams in general did not have amazing luck this weekend. It was great for them in quali, and then after quali, everything just went down the drain. It's very unfortunate for them, like considering where both their started. But
Dam's always got a subplot going on.
Beganovic still got a podium in sprint at the very least.
yeah, that is fair. Actually, I was gonna say that. I only just said the Dams being kind of bad luck because Zelensky, had a poor start and whatever, and then I think Dino also had a poor start in, the feature race, but or did he? Can't remember, one of the 2. Either way, uh, we're on the sprint race anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Another team that had, once again, pretty poor performance was Prema, where I was already surprised that Montoya made it to the top 10 in qualifying, starting from reverse pole. You expect to get at least points, but
It was insanely funny at the last lap. Everyone was just overtaking him. He was just like it was like one by one, everyone was just like right going ahead of him. I'm like, that's lovely. And that's just like that is essentially Prema in F2 and F3 right now. It's just absolutely hilarious to watch.
it's insane. Imagine telling someone like in 2023, yo, you know, both your F3 and F2 team is actively shitting the back, and we'll be like, "What are you talking about?"
Oh, Prema, how you've fallen so far. But no, Montoya's done this with every single sprint start where he doesn't seem to know how to start the car the moment the lights are out. And it's like you're wasting such a good spot there.
I think we call that a skill issue.
It's skill issue for sure.
I always wonder how the conversation goes, like back at home. Like, to think his father is like, giving him tips to like,
JPM is so disappointed. Every single time I see JPM on the screen when the F2 comments F2 on TV direction show him, I'm like, that man is probably like insanely disappointed right now, and it's just hilarious to me. I'm sorry.
yeah. But like, I feel like as a father, you can't just be like, oh, you're shit. You have to be like, hey, have you ever tried putting your foot down on the gas pedal? Have you ever tried that? Like, you have to be a bit educational.
Have you ever tried doing this thing called like getting into gear first? Have you tried like going ahead when the lights turn green, getting your car to go?
Have you tried driving?
Have you tried
See,
driving? That's
Well, we'll get to him when I talk about FREC, but this is why I keep saying that Salim Hanna is JPM's favorite son, despite not being related to him at all.
at least he's putting his foot down on the gas once in a while. But in other news, it was a typical F2 sprint race. Shields cost a safety car, Bennett cost a safety car, just the usual. Um, some drivers had technical issues. I think it was Verone and Mini. Mini seems to have had problems in both qualifying and sprint, which is really bad considering he's pretty much in the title fight. And we ended with a win from Joshua Dirksen, which is incredibly interesting if you consider the fact that I don't know who else saw the graphic on Twitter, but if we only count feature races, he's dead last.
I was gonna mention that, yeah, the fact that he has nothing.
This is just showing off the whole Invicta only being good at like short distances.
Yeah, that's always what I say. They're the quickest in qualifying because they're super quick on the lap. But when it comes to actually having to race, having to overtake, oh my god, don't let these boys overtake. They don't have that in them.
Amara just lucky, okay? We can tell. Kamara's just lucky half the time.
I mean, it's easy if you start from pole.
Exactly.
I mean, we saw it in F3 with Kamara, and we're being so mean today. Oh my god, we're going to get cancelled. Anyway, what I wanted to say, what I mostly remember from F3 and Kamara season, and everyone's like, oh my god, he won so much. I'm pretty sure he won like the majority of the races he won from pole position. When he didn't have pole position, he just pretty much did not overtake most of the races. And if he did, it was like on someone who was really, really slower because it was, reverse grid. And sometimes people starting in the front who would usually only qualify P12 are handed through. It was such a weird statistic to see his F3 season. Anyways, if we're going to the feature, it's important to mention Beganovic's weird start because from what I saw, it was like he had a jump start, then I didn't even think it was a jump start because it didn't look like he really started. It just looked like,
I think he stalled his car.
yeah, but the thing is, he first moved and then he stalled.
I mean, you can stall your car like that as well. It's like a new driver trying to learn manual. Jump up a bit and then you stall the whole car because you don't know where to change your gear.
Yeah, because of that, it just looked to me like he did not do the usual jump start.
He also got 5 seconds for it. So they did like it did facilitate as a jump start, I suppose, but it just didn't look like that.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty strict with that. Like, they have all these cameras around. If you jump start, you jump the start, and they're going to shoot you, whatever. Um, he did not finish the race, right?
Nope. He was one of the first in pits.
He's getting it as a grid penalty sorry, in, cat. He's getting it as a grid penalty in, Hungary. Wait a second, I need to get Cody.
Cody counters back. Welcome back
Yeah,
to the. Oh my god. I can use that graphics again, finally.
you've had it locked and loaded?
It's been there since like episode like 9, the last time I used it, and like 20 episodes later I can finally use it again.
But we need to discuss the first lap because there was I mean, not a lot going on, not in F2, you know, style, but it was still some things going on.
It was like Kamara and still contact, intra attacks led at one. It was like honestly, like in the grand scheme of things, not weird, but it was just just F2. So
You completely forgot about the early crash with Mini and Belinsky, where
I didn't. I just realized that as well.
like they drive, they crash, and it was a bit of a weird situation. Mini got 5 seconds for causing collision. Belinsky had to DNF the race, but other than that, that crash was really irrelevant. Actually, like it did not really impact anything except for like Belinsky, DNFing. But like it just happened, does sometimes. On the other hand, what you already mentioned with the Kamara and Solov contact, that one did lead to a bit of an outrage on social media. I don't know if you guys saw that.
I'm not surprised, honestly. I didn't see anything, but I'm not shocked either way. But depends which fans it's from, though.
Like the nation of Bulgaria is currently trying to start,
Oh.
or with the nation of Brazil. Um, I'm going to be honest. If you saw all the angles of the crash, it was weird because, like, Kamara, I mean, Solov was pretty much in front of him, and I get that we don't want to be too harsh with penalties and want to shoot anyone that does things like that. But considering that Kamara is kind of known for having this kind of driving style where it's just to try to overtake me, well, good luck trying. And I think we still give Dunn a lot of that shit, but I have not seen that from him in quite a few races. But Kamara keeps doing these things and he keeps having questionable situations on track.
Kamara is the new Dunn. That's essentially what we're saying here on the Grand Prixquel podcast.
No, I think Dunn's problem was rather that he was so incredibly fast, like the way that he assumed, incidents to go. It was kind of a bit stupid, but he was thinking of slower race situations. But Kamara's just hardcore. This is my position, and you're not getting that. And I think I understand where you're coming from, but for me, there's still a bit of a difference. Anyways, we still have some other cars that just, did not feel like finishing the race. Mini's car was full on burning at some point, but no one gives a fuck. Whatever.
Goethe out for whatever reason. Just do we know why?
I think he had contact on that first lap. I think that's like a separate incident from the Kamara, Solov, Mini Valinsky, and he just contact and then his car just stopped. There was a picture of him that I thought was really sad where he's pushing the car himself. Always something going on with Goethe and MP down at that garage.
I feel like with Goethe, we see him out a lot. I think he's DNF'd so much this season from what I remember. And I think part of it is the fact that MP is doing a lot of whatever, but also he's constantly like qualifying in the midfield and having to start races in the midfield. And if you're not a driver that's like really, um, careful in those areas, then you're fucked. Like he's not finished a race 6 times this season. That's quite a handful.
Crazy.
And that does not even include times where he may have had like contact or was involved in something which he finished the race, but like his car had some issues, which I'm pretty sure happened. If we talk about cars having issues, being destroyed, we should talk about Van Hoopen's crash.
I think I remember looking. I was looking at my laptop writing notes. I look back up. I just see like a fire. I'm like, oh wow, lovely. Like, sure. That entire car is like done for. There's no way. It's like
Mhm.
new chassis time. Like, there's no way that's going back together. I feel. If not, the front end mechanics are working very long overtime hours right now to get that car repaired for this weekend. Um, what caused it? Did he just like what caused the crash again? Because I don't remember.
I think the problem was he lost. I don't know if he lost the front or the back, but he lost something, and like the tires, and he just slid over the road, turned, went over the gravel like into a barrier, and that was about it. But I wanted to add on, it's not even like the mechanics really have the time to do it, because this week we were in Spa, next week we're going to be in Hungary. Like, they're on the road now. They don't have the time to spend multiple days like really fix that. So I assume it'll just be another chassis which they have to work with.
Speaking of tires, I don't know what's up with those Pirelli tires, but they're absolutely horrible. And F2 is still bound by them because F1 uses Pirelli or whatever. But
Those tires were after I think it was 3 laps at most that they could do. And it was like, it pissed me off because this just does not help with promoting strategy. Because if you have tires that are pretty much like qualifying tires, you can only do like 2 to 3 laps on them. It does not help with getting used to. I mean, on one hand side, it's pretty good because that means no driver is forced to follow their team for any great strategic ideas. And we see usually uh, two different strategies going on. But I feel like maybe it would be better if the tires could at least survive so long that you can change them once the pit even opens. Because for anyone who's potentially not aware, you have to wait, I think it was like the first 6 or 7 laps, um,
six,
before you're
7.
allowed to do. I heard it and I was like, oh my god, I myself. Before you're even allowed to change, or you can change your tires always, but before it counts as the necessary pit stop. Only that, by the time everyone came in, they were like losing so much time. The only guy that, managed it was Noel Leon, who had an absolutely insane weekend. Did we mention that? What happened in qualifying with him?
I don't think so.
Anyways, so he caused a red flag, which usually means you're not allowed to be in the session anymore. And usually a red flag causing that means you'd like total your car or something. But he just, stalled and he went off again, which meant he could start qualifying again. And Campbell sent him out again, which I thought was like the right decision, because you can always discuss later on, but sadly the discussion didn't work for him, and it was decided that all of his laps were disqualified and he would start last. Anyways, in the feature race, he actually had great strategy, because coming from last, he and team like decided to pit from super soft to the hard before it was even allowed. So they knew he would have to do another pit stop. Only that when he had to do another pit stop, we had a safety car and the red flag, so he could switch to tires then, and basically had all the tires when they were in their perfect window. And because of that, at some point he was really, really far ahead, but I don't remember when it was. Anyways, if we want to talk more about Noel Leon, we have to talk about the fact that all of his great stories on the fact that he would have finished the race in the points. I think it would have been like P7. Doesn't matter because he was disqualified.
Yeah, that was a whole situation. Yeah. So what happened? Well, yeah, what happened was the FIA, I guess, or one of his guests using a headset, a not a listening only headset, which in normal people terms, that's a headset by itself. The the guest was a headset with a microphone on it. And so they were saying that there was potential that that guest, who was classified as non-personnel, could be relaying information to the team or whatever, blah blah. And I guess that they decided just to DSQ him for that, and the campus was also pay 20,000 fine, and they also get 25 points from the championship if it happens again. But I think in general, those are really harsh terms. DSQing I know it was Leon's guest from what I can gather from the docs, but like it just seems harsh. That's a whole Volkswagen Golf right there, right? Worth a fine and 20 points if it happens again. Which how can they even determine anyone? Like I know there's a microphone on the side of the headset. But what if the microphone wasn't plugged in? Like
But I think wasn't it in the doc that it said that um the guy or the girl who knows who was there was told by someone at the track that they have the wrong headphones, but they didn't listen. I swear I understood it like that in the document by the FIA. And simultaneously, I understand that we think it's super harsh, and I still think it's harsh, but also it's based on very specific rules. And I understand that, it's a rule and it has to be done. Or next week, you're going to have everyone inviting someone, and suddenly, the limit of people allowed in the pit wall is, broken because everyone has another guy there.
yeah, that's fair. It's always precedent with these rules, and this is how it is. You are right. Apparently, the scrutineer, as the document says, told the told the personnel of the person to or guest to put their to get that headset wasn't permitted, I should say. And apparently, um, they're responsible. The microphone folded upwards, and I guess, and then they just kept using the headset outwards. A lot of people on X have been saying that for some bizarre reason, Solov should have also gotten the penalty, but it also doesn't make sense because this was Leon's guess, I think, from what I can tell. It was a guess of
Yeah.
Leon.
I didn't see that. That was probably just Kamara fans.
No,
People
yeah.
on
It was
No,
even on
like
TikTok.
oh,
genuinely.
yeah, it was only for Leon because Solov argued that it wasn't his guess. So they were like, okay, if it wasn't your guess, then I suppose we only have to give it to Leon.
Yeah, like, why should he get a penalty because Noel Leon's guest can't behave? I think that would have been really unfair. But have we mentioned yet the fact that Noel Leon wasn't even on track? Like, he wasn't even there when that was discussed.
Yeah, he had already left the track. I honestly think he was probably just heading back home or doing something else because like it was just Solov and the team manager there. So Leon wasn't there. Solov was essentially representing him. So that was fun. Imagine like you're on the plane and you get off and you hear from your dude boss, "Hey, so you just got disqualified because one of your guests was wearing a headset with a microphone on it. Thanks, bye." Like,
Um, but also you have to remember the point. Hey, bro, do you have like 20,000 euros on hand? Like, we have to pay that in like 48 hours. Like, you know, maybe call your bank because it is an important edition that it has to be done in the next like 48 hours.
hey, bro, do you have a whole car's worth of money to transfer to the FIA right now? You've got like 2 days to do it, but like right now, like,
We know you're preparing for the next weekend.
I personally do not have 20,000 euros on hand. And like these are rich people, but again, this is F2. Do all F2 drivers have 20,000 euros on hand?
yeah, I was gonna say 20,000 euros in liquid 20,000 euros, probably not.
No, they sell their stocks in Tesla now.
SpaceX IPO, sell the stocks in that. They probably get some crypto, sell off NFTs that are worth 5 cents each. They all probably have a crypto portfolio. Let's be real. They could make money for 48 hours. I think it's doable. Turn their assets into liquid. But
Next thing you see, there's just a driver selling their personal belongings on the story. Like,
No.
outside the track, one of the drivers outside the track is gonna be selling off. Okay, here race suit, boot, helmet, everything, absolutely everything at this point. One day that's happening. We're gonna do this podcast, and one day we're gonna hear an absolutely ridiculous story like that.
okay, to the championship standings, we have Solov still leading by quite a margin on 161 points. Mini was able to salvage at least some points. I think he finished like P6 in the feature race or P5, um, he's on 134. Kamara, with his win, is up to 125, but still quite some points down solo. And those three, they are pretty clearly in a title fight, and I think we'll see some things there. In P4, done on 108 points, can still have an impact, but almost 60 points ahead, I don't think he's quite able to chase down Solov yet. And in P5, Noel Leon, after this horrific weekend, on 69 points, I think it's clear to say the championship will be done between the top four.
Unintended.
And I think quite fascinating.
I'm really sad that Dunn is like 60 points behind Solve because I had him as the title or championship winner I should say for this season, and I think he can still do it, but he's relying a lot on the top three to just not do well as well.
Yeah.
So it's almost over for him at this point.
I think his biggest advantage is that he's pretty, I think he hasn't won a race yet, but he's consistent. Like he consistently gets points. When Kamara DNFs like he did in Monaco, he gets points. And same goes for Saul, obviously. And simultaneously, I think one thing that could aid done in the long run is the fact that I have heard some slight rumors that Mini could be going to Formula E. And if he does go to Formula E, we saw it in the last few seasons, that would mean that he would probably not finish the season, which means naturally Dunn would have at least a chance to get higher up there, but that would depend on Mini leaving the championship.
Yeah, I mean we've seen it with like Pepe Marti most recently, I should say, where I think he missed the last 3 rounds maybe of F2 when he left for Takiro last year or whenever it was. And we've had the same with Taylor Barnard doing the same and like whatnot, but
Zane Maloney also.
I think that's a lot to like bank on like your championship being won by or being back in the fight properly on this driver is gonna leave for Formula E, so therefore I now have like I think it's a bit too optimistic for him, but
It's risky.
But what I would base my expectations on is the fact that we will 100% see some changes on the grid after mattering. 100%. We saw it every single time in the last few years because F3 ends earlier and F2 seats get more expensive after Madrid, or usually was after Monza, but this year it'll be after Madrid when, F2 only goes to, I think it's in Baku. Where are they also? Like they're also in Abu Dhabi, but they're also somewhere else, if that even happens this year. But the thing is, those races are usually quite a chaotic grid. And I think it's a shitty thing to bank your expectations on. But if Roden is still struggling, you have to get a bit desperate with it, I fear. If we're talking about teams, it's super interesting actually, because in the teams championship, we have Campas in P1 with 230 points, quite a bit off. Rodin with 166 points in P2. And P is actually in P3 with 163 points, which, is really good. And I'm really surprised, but Invicta is only P4 with 161 points. And like majority of those are done by Camara. And P2 to P4 are all in the 160 points range. There's like 5 points separating them. We will definitely see some move.
Invicta being that low is again, I think it's just a display of the fact that they only are good in short distances usually, or when they start from pole. And well, that's when whenever we've seen obviously Kamara winning the feature race, or he just doesn't do well in sprint race, or well, he does sometimes. Or I guess I'm meaning to say is that both is that I guess Dirksen, the only of the other Invicta doesn't do well usually, and I think it's just again indicative of the fact that the car itself is just good enough for like quick bursts. So a quali lap, it's a sprint race maybe, but they're not that great a feature, which is where the most of the points are, which is why they're pretty low, I guess, in comparison.
We see both Invictus regularly in the top 10 for qualifying, but usually it's Dirksen then who does not do the same. He can gain because he usually is in a lower top 10 and then he can gain in the sprint, but he can't put that anywhere in the feature race. While MP, on the other hand, has Oliver Goethe as the second driver who usually struggles, has a lot of retirements, but he, instead of doing qualifying, if he gets points, he gains from the fact that others struggle and like crash and stuff, and then he keeps it on track, and then he gets points. So I think MP and Invicta are pretty much very similar in that extent. But we need to get on to F3. F3 qualifying was
Was
just
weird.
penalties.
Quali itself as a whole is just odd. Where do we even start with quali?
We can discuss this now because do we think qualifying, or maybe we should start with what happened and then discuss it. The problem in Spa is that the slipstream and the tow is very efficient, and you pretty much need it to get a good lap down, which means drivers try not to be the first on track, but they try to have someone in front of them, which means they're idiotic. And then you suddenly have a picture of every single car going down the Camel Street right behind each other, right next to each other. And there's 30 cars, and some of them are going 4 wide, and that's not going to work. So we had a lot of penalties. Teofil Nile got a 5-place grid penalty for driving slowly on the racing line. That's the explanation that most are given. And he also got 2 penalty points. Ugatsuku, Kato, Sharp, Ward, Nakamura, Birbakti, and G, they all got 3 places for driving slowly on the racing line and the 2 penalty points, whatever. Ugatsuku and G also got 3 places for leaving the track without justifiable reasons. Delpino and Garfias got each 3 places for weaving in places you aren't meant to be. And Drumstead got 5 places for causing a collision, but wasn't that in the last race or like the first? I don't know. I don't think this was necessarily qualifying. The point is, as we've heard, everyone was on the racing line, everyone was getting annoying. Do we think we should keep F3 qualifying the way it is? Because as an example, in Monza, I don't know if we're doing it again this year, but they did some years ago at least. They separate the grid, so it's only 15 cars, and you avoid having 30 cars all going down. It's still, with 15 cars, still ass, but like it's a bit better. I saw some people asking for 1-lap shootout. What do we think about all of these possibilities?
I am a much firmer believer in group qualifying, having 2 groups, rather than 1 lap shootout, because then at least each group is getting enough time to maybe do 2 laps, 2, 3 laps maximum instead of 1 lap. Uh, though you do also at the same time, then obviously one group will always be disadvantaged because they have the slower like lap time. So I guess it's a bit hard to just you can't because the issue is that when you make this qualifying system more complicated, you've got more implications. Like for example, I'm going to throw Super Formula in here because it's the one category I watch that does this. You've got Group A and Group B for qualifying 1, and then qualifying 2 is just the top 6 from Group A and Group B fighting out for the top 12. But at that point, now you're just putting like a lot of time into just I guess it's just taking up too much time. Whereas, well, the current solution where it's just everyone goes on track and whatever and you do whatever is more time it saves more time. And so I guess what I was saying on okay, I would support whole group A, group B sort of thing is that the track I guess the track evolution over those 2 sessions because again in Super Formula when I watch Super Formula it's the same deal. Group A times are significantly worse usually compared to Group B, and so
So would you say it makes more sense to keep it that way and you just risk every driver getting penalties? Because to be honest, I don't understand why teams would even risk the penalties. Like I know the tow works, but I think we saw it last week in Silverstone, was it? Where I don't remember who it was, but they went out pretty early, did a great lap, and just stayed in the whole time. It worked. Like
Yeah.
at certain tracks, that also works. And, like at some point, you just got to tell the teams the the race director, stop being a stupid bitch and stuff. Oh my god, I'm sorry, Evan. I don't want to be cussing the whole time. Stop being dramatic and just do it good, or we give you a 5-place grid penalty instead of maybe only the 1 or 2 places you would be behind if you didn't get the tow, you know?
Yeah. I think honestly, in this case and scenario, group qualifying would just work the best. I mean, we've seen it work. It's just, yeah, the track evolution thing. But the track evolution thing will always be a problem with group qualifying. So,
I didn't even remember it being that bad in both Monza and Monaco, but I don't have the exact numbers in mind right now.
to be fair, if it is group qualifying and then just bag it to like the fastest time of Group A, then fastest time of Group B, and so on and so forth, then like whatever. I guess that is how it usually is anyway. So I don't know what I'm talking about, but the point is group qualifying. I think could work. Ideally, I'd rather have it be like 2 qualifying sessions, but that adds complexity and time, and F3 has neither of those and cannot do complexity and has no time. So
So, in sprint race, we had um, Nakamura winning with Brando Bador on second and Pedro Claro. I don't know how you pronounce his name. Finishing up the podium. It was, another typical F3 race. Uh, Ugo and Freddie, both championship leaders, crashed on lap one, but there was no further action. Bit of drama. Nakamura pretty much defended pretty solidly. I don't think there's a lot more that we have to say about this whole thing.
I guess sprint, no, I guess feature race then, not sprint, not feature.
Slater had a bad start. Great. Um, I'm I expected Slater in the Trident to be a lot quicker than what he's shown so far because once again he had a bad start. Um, so his only advantage is the fact that I think actually this year Trident is only the second fastest car. The campus seems just strongest everywhere. Only that the campus drivers don't seem to think that way because Uechuku again struggled, went off at the exact same turn as he did the day before with Freddie, and uh, collided with his teammate Teofil Nail, and then Teofil Nail had a front wing destroyed, then collided with a teammate. It's not good, but at least that helped Slater get away from the pointless sprint race we had. We had a safety car because Yevon David stopped, and what really was important in the race for me was seeing the fact that Tuka Tappanen also struggled a lot more than I would have expected him to. And we blame MP quite a lot for that because they, in my opinion, have the strongest lineup, but always struggle a bit with the car. But simultaneously, his teammate, Mattia Colnai, he finished P4, and it was weird. But also, the camera is weird because we had both Bernbakti, the Palo, and Barrichello not finish the race for unmentioned reasons. Just, you know, maybe they didn't feel like finishing the race. It's fine.
yeah, I feel like with F3, we also just don't get as many comments about anyone even DNFing. We just kind of watch them fall down the order and then in pit, oh, retired. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was the typical thing. I think if we talk about the championship standings, it's now Ugochukwu still leading on 104 points, but Slater was able to get really close. He's still P2, but now on 103 points. And he was unlucky to be collected into sprint race, but simultaneously, I expected him to already be leading by some bit at this point of the season. But simultaneously, the Campus is faster. If only the drivers stopped, you know, colliding and stuff. It's a problem we've both seen with Niall and Ugochukwu. And Niall is on P3 with 65 points, but that is so far away from the front from driver who I expected to be closer at least to his teammate. In P4, we have Strömstad with 59 points. Also, it's a I feel like, pretty crash heavy um, grid. And Rivera on 56 points. At least the teams reflect what I'm talking about. Campos on P1 with 225, Trident on P2 with 169, Van Amersfoort 131. There's no big surprises here, just the fact that Campos and Trident are the clearly leading teams. Just both teams get into too many incidents.
Okay, so moving over to FREC at Paul Ricard. Honestly, Paul Ricard probably brought the championship way closer together than any of the other rounds that we had seen. However, when we were doing free practice and quali, there was a lot of surprises, which got me very, very scared. So for quali 1, our top 10 looked pretty typical of FREC. KNB on pole, Weldon, Apkasava, Aldair, Olivieri, Gomez, which I do have to point out, the rodents were quite fast down at Paul Ricard. Good for them. Sater for G4, which has just been surprising me. That entire team has been surprising me these past few weeks. Ninovic, Hannah, and Franco. Actually, this quali kind of ties in with what we were saying about group quali for any track, really. This was a very odd moment where, for some reason, Group A had set, like, not better, but they had set faster quali times in terms of fastest in their group. K and B went faster than Weldon did for group, which was interesting considering the fact that for Weldon's last flying lap, he was only about what was it, like 7 thousandths of a second from him. It's just an odd quali, but very typical for the FREC grid that we have. Race 1, pretty interesting. Considering that we had Olivieri and Apkasava took up most of the screen time with their fight for P2 and P3, and honestly pretty impressive with how Olivieri managed to overtake not just his own teammate of Aldahari, but also Apkasava. But the start, I would say, was probably the weirdest bit for me, where Weldon was starting in P2. They get off the line. Weldon's had a pretty good start. Then suddenly, by I think it was turn 2 or something, really early on in the lap, he falls back to P3, overtaken by Alcazava. And then a few minutes later, you look back at the timing screen and he's fallen all the way down to P5, which, as we should know with Weldon, is not usual. There was this uncanny loss of pace from him. And the MP itself was really strong this whole weekend. And according to commentary and all sorts afterwards, it was a team order to let Apkasava through and for Weldon to fall back, which I thought was just weird, but also quite interesting. at some point, Apkasava also tried pushing Olivier off track, which was, to me, it looked pretty blatant that he did. Like Olivier basically was in the like was practically like a centimeter away from the wall. Maybe he was basically touching it, but it was just ruled no further investigation, which was an odd choice. But
Have you considered that maybe the stewards just did not feel like investigating even more people? Because there were quite a few investigations and penalties already.
yeah, true. The Apkasava Olivier thing that happened in the second half. Everything else was already happening in the first half.
Yeah, but like they saw, we have this bunch of stuff already going on. How about we just don't do our job anymore?
Okay. Speaking of penalties, let's quickly go through them considering that FREC always seems to have the most amount of penalties. Okay. Munoz, 5-second penalty for moving before lights. Okay. Ninovich, 10 seconds for contact with Hannah. Something I want to point out about this. We are on round 6 of 8. Ninovich has managed to collect 9 points, 9 penalty points on his record, which is so close to a race ban. And I don't remember. I think he's collected most of them from like the first 2 rounds ish. But it's insane how somebody manages to rack up 9 penalty points.
I mean, we've seen worse.
Okay. We have seen outright race bans. That is true. But 9. Okay, continue on with penalties. Stolchomanis, 10 seconds, contact with Ninovich. That all happened in the last corner. I remember watching it, and Ninovich into Hannah, Stolchomanis right behind Hannah, nearly went into Ninovich. Sano, 5-second penalty, gaining lasting advantage off track. Kostic, also 5 seconds penalty, gaining lasting advantage off track. Daryanani, 5 seconds left track unjustifiably, and then Lyle, 5 seconds race mode infringement because he had race off prior to the race. Which is, I think, out of FREC, it's the silliest like race mode penalties that we've seen just from these guys. It's genuinely getting so weird. Quali 2 had a plot twist. Okay, so in the second group that went off for qualifying, quite a few of the people that we've seen be faster were in the same group, which made me not very surprised. Where in the last seconds, or basically as everybody was finishing their flying lap, everybody basically overtook K and B's overall pole, which I wasn't surprised by. But literally, last one over the line, Emanuele Olivieri just takes outright pole by basically a whole tenth in front of Weldon, who had set pole for his group. However, I think it's about 3 hours later, prior to his flying lap, Olivieri comes into pits. 3 hours later, after he sets his pole lap, he gets a a 3 grid place penalty because his car wasn't exactly at a 45-degree angle in the pits before the team started working on it, which leads him to losing pole and having to start in P4. Seb Weldon inherits pole, and therefore he gets to start on pole and he gets the pole positions. And I don't think I've ever heard that penalty before, like for that specific reason.
They hated him because he was too quick. But I have to bring Robin's spirit on this whole thing. Championship, what's the word? Going for the championship from Olivier is on again. We will see him go for the championship. He will do it.
The fight is back on.
On the honor of Italy. I think race 2 really helped with that one to keep the championship alive.
Yes, definitely. So, race 2, the order changed quite a bit actually from quality now that I'm looking at it. So, top 10 on track was originally Weldon, Olivieri, Apkasava, KNB, Gomez, Aldahari, Chi, Ninovich, Churovsky, and Anurag. First of all, Churovsky and Anurag towards the back in a proper race is at the end of the points anyways is quite interesting to me, being in an RPM and in an ART. But then we also had the Tridents have just been fighting each other. I'm not sure why. Daryanani and Kostic once again had contact. And at some point during the race, Apkasawa had been noted for a false start, like moving before the lights had gone. However, during the race, it was called that there was no further action. So, personally, as I was watching, I just kind of expected nothing was going to go on and he was just going to maintain his podium. Um, but then after the race, suddenly, I guess the stewards decide to bring it back up and were like, actually, no, he did have a false start. He gets 5 seconds, which which makes this the second weekend in a row that Akasawa's gotten a 5 second penalty and Kian has benefited from it. As a KNB fan, I am very, very happy about that. And probably was another point in this weekend that helped relaunch the championship title fight. Additionally, to help the title fight was Olivieri, Franco, and Apkasawa fighting each other for what was basically half the race for the P2, P3, like P4 positions, basically. And this time around, Olivieri decides I'm gonna try and overtake Akasawa and also kind of get payback for race one. Kinda looks like he pushes Akasawa off the road, but then the stewards are like, nope, actually not. This was also another problem that I had with FREC, where Franco also retired halfway through the race, and we were told nothing about it. The entire time on the timing screen, it just says he's in pits, and his name isn't like grayed out, and it just shows he's like whatever number of laps behind. But for some reason, it was just always one lap, so I just assumed he was still racing. He wasn't. He had retired. And something I do have to compliment Olivieri on is that his overtakes this entire weekend were just so clean and so wonderfully executed. It was actually such a wonder to watch. Like coming into one corner, just behind, and then he'd take one of the lines and just do a sweep around the outside, and there was never like a question of it. It's just beautiful. I love FREC. Crazy thing to say, but FREC beautiful right now. And after his horrific weekend down at Hungary, Sebald manages to take a win, a pole position, and a fast lap all in the same race. Penalties, not as many this time around. Daryanani, 10 seconds collision with Kostic. Get these two away from each other. And Macedo, 5 seconds for a practice start. This is the interesting bit. And this is where we start talking about championship title fight. For our top 5 drivers, in P1, we have KNB with 172 points. Next two positions, P2 and P3, we have Weldon and Al-Dahir tied with 159 points. P4, Olivieri only 7 points behind, 152 points. And then P5 is Franco all the way down with 90 points. I'm so fucking scared for this championship fight.
I think I really need to go to Hockenheim because I'm pretty sure Hockenheim is the finale or it's like really late in the season and I could totally do it. And I think we need that life experience on here to know who wins the title.
Yeah. And I think it'd be good if you win because out of I think all of our hosts here, you're the only like proper neutral one.
I was for Ninovich, but he's been more of a terrorist, more collecting terrorism points than collecting race win points. We take it.
Ninovich and his 9 penalty points.
But if we're already talking about going to races, then I think it's a great point to lead over to British F4 in Zandvoort, where I went last week already, but we have to keep it all together. And I'm trying to, because it's already been a week, I don't remember anything. I got really sick actually from being there. Um, Try to go through it pretty quickly because a lot of the things that happened were really typical British F4. I mean, Dries van Langendonk is back on top also in qualifying majority of races. It was pretty good. Rest of the qualifying was also typical, guys. But there was one great, great surprise. And this weekend, it was Alba Larsen who qualified P9, her best qualifying in British F4 so far. It was kind of helped by the fact that during qualifying we had a red flag because I don't remember who. It was Mercier who crashed. And Zandvoort had a lot of red flags. We were behind a bunch of time anyways, all the time because there was so much crashing going on. But overall, it was a good thing. It was chaotic, but it was still solid, I would say. In race one, we had what I meant when I said it was pretty typical. With Dries van Langendonk winning the race, Palmer being on second after qualifying fourth, and Skarken Lindblom in P3. You know, it's just the way things are supposed to be around here. Werrell had a few problems and did not score any points, which helped DVL to get back onto. I don't think he got the championship lead in that race, but it definitely helped with the points he gained, where Werrell didn't gain any points. But all races, and this one included, were pretty disrupted by safety cars. It was very little straight up racing, and Zandvoort is pretty big, so it's compared to like Donington Park, Brands Hatch, it's pretty big and very technical. So there was not as much like overtaking and stuff as we would usually see in British F4. But I think race 2 was especially interesting to a lot of people, especially for the podium, which consists of Ethan Lennon, George Prud. It was George Provenal, right? That's like his name because I'm pretty sure that's his name, anyways.
That is his name, George
That is
Provenalder.
great. But the one everyone was happy for, everyone was very ecstatic for, was Alba Larsen finishing on the podium for the very first time in single seaters, as far as I think. Um, I do think so because I know she got a podium taken away in F1 Academy, but I don't remember if she got a podium in whatever small F4 series she did before. Anyways, it's her first podium this season, anyways, and her first one in British F4, which means a lot. It means a lot to me because this is the second time running where I'm at Zandvoort to see a female driver take a podium in British F4. We need to make this a tradition. I would really like to see a win next year if someone could, commit to the whole thing. It would be beautiful.
You're their lucky charm.
I'm the luckiest charm. Every single time that I was at an F4 race in the last few years, which is only like 3 times, I saw a female driver on the podium. And that's great statistic if you ask me. We couldn't talk about this early in the year, but I was also at Nordic 4 where I didn't even remember, but I think the same weekend, Miller Ho got a win even, I think, but I don't quite remember. It's been a few months. I freeze myself. Alba Larsen benefited a lot from the fact that the guys ahead of her were crashing, and also the fact there were a lot of safety cars, and she struggled a bit on the restarts, but in the end she could hold on to that third place, and it was a magnificent podium. It was also supported by Maya Werk, and I wonder if the fact that Maya was around for the whole weekend helped her perform better, because it was definitely by far her best performance in British F4 so far. Do you think that having an experienced German, someone that I rate very highly like Maya Werk around, really helps drivers?
I think, yeah, because it's somebody who's like not only just in your corner, but somebody who's been there before, you know? So it's just like mentally, that must also just help so much.
And I think what helps with Maya is the fact that I know that I was also getting a bit of coaching and stuff from Kevin Magnussen. But I think it's a different thing if you're a female driver and you're used to, the discrimination, the way people talk about you, and you have someone in your corner who has gone through the same things. That helps. But either ways, uh, DVL cannot be kept from the podium as he was still on the rookie podium for the race and is impossible to get off that podium. But he was joined by Yingling, which means for the second year running, we also see a German guy, at least on the rookie podium. That's great for me again. But I got really sick and I'm still sick from being at Zandvoort. For race 3, we got back to the usual things, with Dries van Langendonk winning the race and the podium being filled also with Lindblom and Palmer. It was an even more disruptive race because right as we watched around Tarzan, or like the exit from Tarzan, multiple drivers went off. Specifically, Lindblom, I don't remember who, but maybe he didn't push, but like he was involved with someone else going off the track. Someone pushed Ella Lloyd off track. It was a lot going on. But in the end, it was a really good weekend considering that Dries van Langendonk is back on the podium. Not back on the podium. He's back in the lead of the championship. And we saw a great weekend. It was beautiful. I love Zandvoort. I love British F4. It was a lot of fun, and we're pretty much in the second half of the championship now. And so far, Dries is leading the championship by 179 points to Lewis Werrell, who did not score any points this weekend, with 132 points, and Theo Palmer, who had a pretty solid weekend, but is also only at 125 points. And as for the rookie standings, they have not been updated, but from what I see, since Dries Langendonk keeps winning and keeps being on the rookie podium all the goddamn time, he's also doing pretty solid there, so it's a good thing. It's a nice thing.
Can't keep him down.
I just say I managed to talk to Dries Langendonk after his first win a short bit, and I'm really antisocial, but he just seems like such a nice bloke. Like it was really funny because for the third race, there were so many people with like Dries van Langendonk t-shirts and like flags and stuff. Um, I hope I can ask Evan if he can maybe enter like a picture here for at least a YouTube video. And it was so crazy to see how much support he gets. Because we saw a lot of support for Albert Larsen, because I feel like she's also one of those drivers everyone knows, and everyone's like really happy if she does well, if she's on the podium, it's like a big thing. But the way people showed up and the difference in sound for when they announced like Palmer on the podium, Lindblom on the podium, like people were like, yay, but like, all right. But when DVL was nuts, they were so ecstatic. And I think it's such a special thing to see a driver like him. And like recently, it was announced that he is now getting also supported by, I think, Max Verstappen in some way. Either way, the point is he's doing very well. It's great to see a young driver like him get so much support and clearly be on a great road and pretty much inevitably on the road to F1. And I'm excited to see what more we can see from him. Is there anything else that we need to add to what we've seen this weekend or last weekend?
I think that's it then. So
I just remembered.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Because I wanted to make a reminder, and I have to think about how I voice that. Because I was at Zandvoort, British F4, and Alba Larsen got her first podium. I personally, not affiliated to the podcast, but I thought that it would probably interest a lot of people listening to the podcast, I decided to do a little giveaway for a little Danish flag, which I got signed by Alba Larsen at British F4. Maybe that was also very giving luck away. And that and an unsigned MP driver card from 2025. I'm giving away both of these things in like a giveaway on Twitter. For that, you just have to either go into my account or the Grand Prixquel podcast account. They also have it uh, reposted. And to participate, you just have to follow the Grand Prixquel podcast on Twitter and repost my post. Again, this is not related to the podcast, but it's done by me, and I assume people who listen to this podcast would probably like to hear it. And you can still enter into it until the 27th of July 2026. And then on the 27th, I will probably, or to 28th, I will announce who has won it. And I'm hopeful that I can make someone really happy with this, because I know that, especially getting closer to female drivers like Alba Larsen, who are usually F4 drivers, who are usually, someone who can talk to, is not able for a lot of people, because most of these only drive in F1 weekends. But I'm trying to be nice here. So I hope someone's interested in that.
So I think that's it for this episode. If you like this episode, be sure to give us a follow on our Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Grand Prixquel, and give us a follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts under the Grand Prixquel Pod. Next episode, we'll be reviewing the F2 and F3 weekends at the Hungary Ring, Italian F1 Mugello, and British F4 Thruxton. And thanks for listening.